So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. And so when you hear something in a 12-tone scale, you may say, well, that's not music. That's not music. You see, so it has to be a growing, complexifying awareness and understanding of what our subject is, of what that music has many dimensions to it, many aspects to it, and I don't know how else to explain it except I know exactly what you mean.
But see, it's like you said too, the word, like John Durley brought out, is a tone, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that when we really hear that spiritual tone, we're out of the dichotomy of the two records, right?
Yes.
And we have then resolved that into the one.
Yes,
the
yes,
oneness.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we'll take our break now. Thank you. I wonder if you can hear the difference in tonality. If we say analysis, uncovering, annihilation. Annihilation meaning destruction. Analysis, uncovering, destruction, self-destruction. Or if we say analysis, uncovering, and we hear how love would lift the language of the sixth into the seventh and say spiritualization. See? Analysis, uncovering, spiritualization. Oh, I like that. That feels so much better, doesn't it? Analysis, uncovering, perfectibility. And so you hear with that third, as though you would have Word, Christ, Christianity. The analysis of the Word, the uncovering of the Christ, the spiritualization of Christianity, the perfectibility of Christianity, as though there's a process going on and that there's an outcome, a result, something coming forth from that working of the right relationship of the analysis and the uncovering of that which I am not, the uncovering of the correctness, the allness of the I am not as well as the I am, that the I am and the I am not are one and the same. This realization is a process that is a perfectibility process, a spiritualization process, which every individual consciousness undergoes, which the whole of universal consciousness undergoes, typified through the 1,000-year periods. Those 1,000-year periods meant to characterize the whole of time, all that remains of time, that goes on. So wherever we appear in those 1,000-year periods, I mean, we have individuals who lived in time-wise in the second 1,000-year period or the third or the fourth, or as we do in the 6th or 7th 1,000-year period. We still, within, at that point in time, undergo a process of the evolution of consciousness through 7,000-year periods, through 7 great stages of evolution, as there is a perfectibility of the individual consciousness. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we appear at a certain point in time, so to say, if you're thinking of the 1,000-year periods as 7 1,000-year periods of time. But behind the time is the deeper structure of the reality of the evolution of the spiritual idea. And this is working in the lives of each one of us, so that each one of us, no matter at what point in time we appear here in this experience, undergoes 7,000-year period, a 7,000-year period evolution. So that those 1,000-year periods really are states and stages of evolving consciousness. And this is a perfectibility process. Can you see that you couldn't take that second record out of the context? You can't go from analysis to annihilation or analysis to spiritualization. There must be the revealing of that which is unreal. The moment you see this is reality, you know what is unreality, and these are the same thing. Now, let's look at what Mrs. Eddy says about her own experience. And that would be by starting on page 108 of the textbook, if you want to follow with your textbook. And you know that in the suggested preparation, I asked you to actually look up the Mrs. Eddy's usage of the term equipollence and to take the context of the opening of that 6th chapter to give you a build-up, a context for exactly what she is saying about this term, equipollence.
What page?
108, line 19. She's telling about her discovery of the Christ science. It's this chapter in which we find the 2 translations. Actually, Mrs. Eddy uses the term unreality only 23 times in the textbook. The very first time that she uses it in the textbook is when she speaks of the equipollence of God. The second time that she uses it is when she brings in the 2 translations. So now she's telling about the discovery of the Christ science, or the divine laws of life, truth, and love, which she says is Christian science. And in a way, she shows the inductive way that she went and the deductive way as coinciding. When apparently near the confines of mortal existence, standing already within the shadow of the death valley, what record is that? What record of creation? Huh? Within this mortal sense, this false sense of creation, apparently near the confines of mortal existence, in the midst of that second record phenomenon, I learned these truths in divine science. Apparently, divine science was right there in that experience. In what seemed to be the second record experience, divine science was there. What did she learn? That all real being is in God, the divine mind, and that life, truth, and love are all powerful and ever present. You just can hear what we've been talking about since we came together. That all real being is in God, the divine mind, and that life, truth, and love are all powerful, right in the midst of that second record experience, and ever present. And her marginal heading is light shining in darkness. that the opposite of truth, called error, sin, sickness, disease, death, is the false testimony of false material sense. She saw the truth about the false sense. The sense of mind in matter, this is all the second record, that this false sense evolves in belief, a subjective state of mortal mind. This is exactly what we will see in the second record, which this same so-called mind names matter, thereby shutting out the true sense, the sense of spirit, which is the first record. The first record is the record of spirit. And this is why you will find in the 15th chapter that spirit comes into the text so much when she is speaking about the first record and also about the second, that she refers to spirit not so much as being a tone within the context of that first record, but that the whole record is the record of spirit. My discovery that erring, mortal, misnamed mind produces all the organism and action of the mortal body set my thoughts to work in new channels and led up to my demonstration of the proposition that mind is all and matter is not. Actually, this is an equipollent statement. Mind is all, matter is not. This is saying the same thing. To say matter is not is to say mind is all. And she says this is the leading factor in mind science. Christian Science reveals incontrovertibly, can't be reversed, can't be turned around, incontrovertibly that mind is all in all, and that the only realities are the divine mind and idea. This great fact is not, however, seen to be supported by sensible evidence. The second record phenomenon does not bear that out, does not support that. The false sense with its evidence does not support that. Until its divine principle is demonstrated. By healing the sick and thus proved absolute and divine. This proof, this, you might say, spiritualization, this demonstration, this perfectibility, once seen, no other conclusion can be reached. And then she tells about the next 3 years after her discovery, how she sought the solution of this problem of mind healing. Searched the scriptures, and we know that that was a very difficult time in her life, that the phenomena, the second record phenomena, were intense for her. But she says of that time that the search was sweet, calm, and buoyant with hope. And that she won her way to absolute conclusions through divine revelation, reason, and demonstration. The revelation of truth in the understanding came to me gradually and apparently through divine power. Really, you can hear that law of life, truth, and love breaking in, coming in, that there was something above her, working on her, that it wasn't up to her strictly to reason everything out, that reason belonged to the process, but that revelation stood above reason and demonstration. And she says, Jesus said, "My doctrine is not mine, but his that sent me." If any man will do his will, he shall know of the doctrine, whether it be of God or whether I speak of myself. In other words, it wasn't mine. It came from God. It was from life, truth, and love. It was the influx of life, truth, and love. The three great verities of spirit, omnipotence, omnipresence, omniscience, spirit possessing all power, filling all space, constituting all science, contradict. Now you hear that we have some contradictories. You getting now this contradictory? First she's going to give a sense of the contradictories, then she will move into the equipollence. Contradict, that's the office of truth, forever the belief that matter can be actual. The belief that matter can be actual, that's the second record. So the omnipotence of spirit, the omnipresence of spirit, the omniscience of spirit, the first record of spirit, contradict forever the second record, the belief that matter can be actual. These eternal verities reveal what? Primeval existence as the radiant reality of God's creation. First record, huh? Do you hear that? First record of creation. They reveal the first record of creation, in which all that he has made is pronounced by his wisdom good. Thus it was that I beheld as never before the awful unreality of evil. The equipollence of God brought to light another glorious proposition. So there we have our term, equipollence, first and only time she uses it, as though to say, that's the equipollence of God, the awful unreality of evil, versus the allness of God's creation. You see that? As though to show on one hand the first record of creation, that the verities of spirit reveal primeval existence as the radiant reality of God's creation, in which all that he has made is pronounced by his wisdom good. Thus it was, with that true analysis, that the false, that unreality was revealed, was uncovered, right? The awful unreality called evil. And now you must read that properly and not read it, ooh, the awful unreality of evil. And you go right over this equipollence of the reality of God good and the unreality of evil. These are the same thing. These are the same thing. And with awful, she doesn't mean the ordinary, what we mean in the ordinary, every day, every man sense of being terrible, being frightful, being fearful. But she means the reverence before the fact of the unreality of evil, the sense of awe before the fact that evil is unreal, that evil has no reality. There's only the reality of good. So the first record is presenting that primeval existence, that radiant, light-filled reality of God's creation, of the allness of God. And the second record is presenting the equal, the equal balance, the other side of that balance, that therefore there is absolutely no reality in evil. There's no reality called evil. Evil is unreality. That one is in awe before the nothingness of anything else but the allness of God good. This is the awe, the reverence before the fact of the nothingness of anything else but the allness of God good. This is the equipollence of God. The equipollence of God brought to light another glorious proposition. Man's what? What is it? Man's perfectibility. You see that? So we have the Word of the first record, the Christ of the second record, a sense of the Christ, and then the outcome of Christianity. Actually, she says it's a third proposition. This third proposition is also equivalent to the first and second propositions. In equipollence, you have statements that are equivalent in meaning, in force, though stated differently. This is the meaning of equipollence. Now you have a third proposition, man's perfectibility and the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. These are the 1,000-year periods. And you know that with the 7,000-year period, this was the millennium, the Sabbath, the period of the Sabbath. This was the period in which the kingdom of heaven was to be established on earth, was the 7,000-year period. So she shows us, really brings in the another glorious proposition that perfectibility is possible, that mankind can experience the outcome of the Word and the Christ, the outcome of the true relationship of the first and the second records. And we will see in the second record, I think I may have said yesterday, that it is a microcosm, and you have in that first 1,000-year period a microcosm of the working out of that which will then be worked out through the 7,000-year periods by all mankind. In following these leadings of scientific revelation, the Bible was my only textbook. The scriptures were illumined. Reason and revelation were reconciled. And afterwards, the truth of Christian Science was demonstrated. The truth of the Christ science, the laws of life, truth, and love were demonstrated. So this is the equipollence of God, and I hope you can hear why we have taken the time to build up the place value of the first record, the place value of the second record, that all subsequent Bible revelation, namely the 1,000-year periods, and you know those 1,000-year periods don't just end really with the Bible, because the Bible comes to a conclusion in the 5th 1,000-year period, but then that the textbook comes in and takes up the 6th 1,000-year period, and we have really the model of being coming in as a 7th 1,000-year period form of consciousness, gathering everything up into one page, one sheet, so to say. Or just remind you what the model of being is. And that she really is showing that this is a pattern that belongs to every man. that this is a pattern of development, a pattern of evolution, a way of salvation. It is the way of salvation. It is the workings of the Christ idea, the workings of the Christ translation individually, collectively, universally on all mankind through the equipollence of God. It's the equipollence of God working. So I asked you to see if you could find some very good definitions, either in a good dictionary, a philosophical dictionary, or a dictionary, a Webster's dictionary, or whatever. I wondered if you did that, if you found anything. Tell you, I love to have something that I don't have here. And does anybody have anything they can offer? Yeah, Dave?
Well, I was looking in I think it was 1848 dictionary by Webster.
Yeah.
And I can't quote it, but it said saying the same thing in two different ways, or two different languages.
Yes.
Subjects.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's certainly the gist of it, isn't it? Webster says equipollence is to be equal in force. The first and second records are equal in force. The perfectibility of man through the 7,000-year periods is equal in force. We really have three great statements now that are equipollent. To be equal in weight. You see, they have the same deep structure, don't they? The same deep structure. The 7 and the 4 are the deep structure. The impulsion of life, truth, and love is the deep structure, impulsion behind each one of those statements. They are equal in weight, equal in validity, equivalent in meaning or result. They all end in love, don't they? They're all depictions of love in operation, and they all end, so to say, end, not really end, but their result is, the outcome is love, the goal of love fulfilled. Equality of power, that's equipollence. A relation of equivalence between two or more propositional forms. Identical value. They have identical value. Having the same relation or force. And then in the Student's Reference Dictionary, I don't know how many of you have that. That's such a good dictionary. It was put together by a group of Christian scientists, I believe, who wanted to take all of the terms that Mrs. Eddy had used and to find the dictionary meanings that she would have used at her time when she used those terms. And so under equipollence we find equality of power or force, in logic an equivalence between two or more propositions, that is, when two or more propositions signify the same thing, though differently expressed. Isn't that beautiful?
She also uses diversity, formal diversity, which I liked in there, which helps.
Formal diversity. Oh, yes, good. Formal, referring to logic. Yeah. So each one of those three propositions says the same thing. The first record says, I am mind. And the second record says, I am mind. And the first 1,000-year period says, I am mind. The first record says, I am spirit. And the second record says, I am spirit. And the second 1,000-year period says, I am spirit. As though you just can't get away from it. No matter where you are in your experience, you cannot escape that reality of the deep structure, the deep structure reality of being. Reminds me of that song, You'll Never Get Away From Me. You remember that one? You don't remember that one, that's too bad.
So, Peggy looked up 5 different dictionaries, and of all the different things that they explain, in the Oxford American Dictionary, the one word means everything. It's counterbalancing. It's counter first and second.
Is that what it says in the Oxford?
Counterbalance.
Yeah?
Yeah, in Oxford American.
Uh-huh. Can you read it to us?
That's a equipoise, equilibrium.
No, equipollence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on down from that, the different meaning of that word,
Okay.
equipoise, it comes into a balanced state, a counterbalancing thing.
All
The
right.
first and second records are.
Yes.
counterbalancing.
Yes, they're perfectly balanced. Yes, perfectly balanced, right.
She liked that word because in equipoise, which she uses, we all know, later on, as referred to mind, which is great. The other thing I found is it equals mother in one of my researches. So I went into that and I thought, oh my golly, this is gorgeous because it's all love, capital love. And so it coincides exactly, it embraces the whole subject.
I'll be getting together with you afterwards on that. Find out more about that. Sounds
Also, there's the same effect or significations.
Yes,
What was that?
the same in effect or signification. Yeah. Yeah. Is that the American Heritage Electronic Dictionary? Yeah. One of our favorite dictionaries. So, that is the equipollence of God. And, of course, here and there throughout the textbook, she, will use the, what do you want to say? She uses equipollence very much in her language, in her parlance. But you have to be able to hear it. You have to have a sense of equipollence to recognize it, to detect it. For instance, of Jesus, she would say the following. See if you can hear the equipollence. The man of sorrows best understood the nothingness of material life and intelligence and the mighty actuality of all-inclusive God good. Hear it? Huh? So first, she gives a sense from the second record standpoint that he best understood the nothingness of material life and intelligence. And from the first record standpoint, the mighty actuality of all-inclusive God good. These are the same in weight, in value. And she says these were the 2 cardinal points of mind healing. Apparently you must have that equipollence of consciousness in order to experience the outcome, the healing. Healing is always a perfectibility process. The 2 cardinal points of mind healing or Christian Science, which armed him with what? What was he armed with when he had that equipollence? With love. Yeah, armed him with love. Yeah, all right. Very good. Thank you for bearing with me on that. It took us a while to get to the actual definition, the technical definition, to get to Mrs. Eddy's explanation of her own experience, but I felt it was worth going through the process of building that up so that we could draw the same conclusions of equipollence. Yeah. All right, let's stop for a moment, and I want to pass out the illustrated material for the class. All right, so you have the illustrated material. Do you like it?
Wow.
Yeah, this is my moment to really thank everyone who has contributed so much to make this event happen on both coasts. And looking at the illustrated material makes us want to thank Loris Boydston for everything that she does in her many facets of expertise to bring these things forth. And so these wonderful layouts that you see, 3 layouts, and much of the remaining material were done by Loris. We met, we had rendezvous between here and there, and went over things, and a lot goes into this idea, into this work, to make it possible. But you see that actually the material begins with the copy of the letter to you, my letter to you about the course, and then the suggested preparation for the class. Then the first thing that you have appearing after that is John Dorley's Matrix. We will be looking at John Dorley's Matrix from the standpoint of the Word, to compare the values for the Word, the calculus of the Word, in other words, the Word as the Word as Christ, Word as Christianity, Word as science, that because we want to see that the 7 are embedded in the 4, and that the fourfold calculus is that which is driving and operating the movement, causing the movement of the 7, why the 7 move, why mind moves to spirit and spirit to soul, and then soul to another aspect of soul, and then principle and life, and then life to another aspect of life, and to truth, and then truth to another aspect of life, truth, and love. That there is a patterning of the values in the days of creation that finds its deeper origin, its deeper source in the matrix, in the word vertical of the matrix. So we will just quickly recall to ourselves the values involved in the word in the John Dorley matrix before we touch on those values as they are adapted to a generative sense, to a creative sense, which we'll see. Then on the next page, you have the days of creation and their layout of subtones, together with the layout of the word in its 4 aspects, so that the pattern, this is the deep structure pattern. It's the deep structure pattern for the days of creation, the first record. It's the deep structure pattern for the second record. It's the deep structure pattern for the 1,000-year periods. And you see that it is not a pattern of 49 subtones, not a 7 by 7, but it is 29 subtones. And these 29 subtones then are like an economization of being, an economizing of the 49 to that which is absolutely necessary to generate something, to create something, to bring something into creation. And that's what we see in the days of creation, set forth basically, fundamentally, in the word sense of that word in the first record of creation. And you see how the 4 come in, that therefore there are definite breaks. And we have to know where those breaks are to recognize them, to feel the tonality. This is something we will be exploring together. Then you see how this layout of the days and the 4 are further expanded into three layouts, 3 large layouts. And these layouts are much like the matrix layouts that we had for any of you that were in the David, when we took the David story. We had the David story laid out really in 3 languages. That's what we find. We find a 5,000-year period language. And this is the language of the Bible, the language of the biblical story. And so running parallel, you have the first and second records with their biblical symbolizations in the language, therefore, of the Bible, or the 5,000-year period, consciousness. Again, showing the 29 subtones and the 4 breaks of the word. And in the second layout, you have a further language. It's the language of the 6,000-year period, and so it's the same story, but it is in metaphysical ideas. So we would see the metaphysical ideas behind the biblical story, again showing the first and second records parallel, 29 subtones, and 4 great breaks. And then finally you come to the third. I had said to Loris, should we bother to do this third one? But you know, the more you live with the subject, the more profound that third one becomes when you see that it's showing you it's the same deep structure. First record and second record look exactly the same in the 7,000-year period language. From that consciousness, they're the same. That's the consciousness of love. Isn't that something? We felt that already. So I love that third one, the language of the capitalized terms. And then finally you have as a backbone to everything the model of being, because everything that we consider is found in the model of being. And we know that if we are looking at the word order, that we're looking at the level of Christian Science, right? The word order on the level of Christian Science. Mind, spirit, soul, principle, life, truth, and love, that law of the word, above which is standing the law of the word in absolute Christian Science, the law of life, truth, and love. And so that is where we are. Yes. Now, let's just make a few remarks before this afternoon, because this afternoon we will begin with the text of the Bible, with Genesis 1:1. But we said that we have an evolution being depicted here through the 29 subtones and the breaks of the word. We have the generation of something, and it is as though we would look at a system of consciousness. We would look at consciousness, and consciousness is a system. And in the first record, we will see that all of the forces in the system are in perfect balance, that there is nothing negative there, no negative thing enters in. Even if you speak about the night, night does not have a negative connotation. Only when we move to a further standpoint where night takes on a connotation of a lack of light, or of needing to resolve a darkened state of thought, or, for instance, in the first statement of the second record, you have that ignorance, that mist coming up, a mist, a sense of obscurity or darkened vision or whatever. Then would darkness have a negative connotation? But in the first record, there is nothing negative. And so you have there you could say that the values for the I and the J are absolute in their relativity. I guess you could say that even though we're on the level of Christian Science, and it's has a relative sense to it, that there's an absoluteness about that relativity. Whereas in the second, as we look at the second record of creation, what we see is a dynamically evolving system of consciousness. We see a system of consciousness that is near equilibrium. And to be near equilibrium is not a good thing. You have to understand the term equilibrium and in which way it is used in terms of a system that is very little open, very little, is very much closed on itself. A system that should be open but that is very much closed is a system that is near equilibrium. It is the office of love, it is the office of the science of love to open this system up. That's what we will see. The second record has to be opened up. The system that the second record depicts is a system that needs to be opened up by love. To be near equilibrium is to have very little information. That's how the whole thing starts. There went up a mist from the ground and watered the whole face of the earth. A cybernetic sense of just that lack of vision, falling back on the lack of vision and producing more lack of vision, and mistiness of thought and obscurity, and then we need the light. We need the light of the first record. How is that going to come in? So it's a system with very little information, but it is informed. And it is not informed out of itself, but it is informed, we might say, from outside of itself. It is informed by the calculus. It is informed by the law of life, truth, and love. It is informed by the sevenfold nature of reality. It is informed by flashes of light that come into that system. And along the way we will find how that system that would otherwise be totally without light, totally without, recourse to salvation, is fluctuated by the divine system of reference. And so we see that however closed that system seems to be, that there is some openness in it. And this is true. This is true of every consciousness. That no matter how closed a consciousness seems to be, no matter how near to equilibrium it seems to be, there is just that measure of openness that is ideal to drive it out of its closedness and into complete openness. And so, in spite of its inner tendency to be closed, that system is nested within a greater system that is forcing it to become open. It is opening it up. So it is nested within a greater system. You know that whenever you see a system whose entropy is dissipating, then you know that it is nested within a greater system, which is impacting it, affecting it, changing it. So that is the impact, really, of the system that is depicted in the first record of creation. The first record of creation is that which has the power, the Christ power, to impact the standpoint of the second record of creation and to change it and to overturn it. Does that make sense? Is that somewhat clear? So the first record depicts an ideal non-equilibrium system, far from equilibrium, far as you can get, non-equilibrium system, ideally open. There's ideal openness in that system. It's dynamic. It depicts the dynamic state of consciousness, dynamic state of man's consciousness. Error doesn't arise there. There's no negative there. No night is there, so to speak. So it is ideally evolving within itself, evolving its own self-consciousness. You see that God is evolving his own self-consciousness of himself until at the point of the sixth day, God reflects on himself and says, let us make. Let us, life, truth, and love, make an image of ourselves. As though to say, that's what I am making. That's what God being is creating, is his own self-image of himself in completeness and perfection. Whereas the second record, reflected in the second record there, we see the workings of the first record upon the second record. We see the divine constituency of the first record, the 7, the 4, the 3, the 1, working on the second record. And with the second record, then you have a system that is undergoing correction, that is being corrected. Wherever there's deviation from the straight line of spirit, the line of that word of life in and of spirit, wherever there's that deviation, you have the correction going on by love's homeoraisa and homeostasis that will correct that system, control that system, regulate that system through those laws of positive and negative feedback, and bring forth the idealness of the correcting of any error. So that with those two records, we see that wherever we are, love is there. In the second record experience, as Mrs. Eddy says, right in the midst of that she found divine science. That divine science spoke to her, that divine science led her way, told her what was going on, explained to her what the true record is, what reality is, what is unreal. And so love is there, right in the midst of that which we call a second record creation. You know, the psalmist says, behold, if I make my bed in hell, something like that. Even if I go to the uttermost parts of the earth or the sea and make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. Thou art there. There you are again, love. And so that's what we will witness. Well, I'm going to let you go now, and this afternoon we will begin the text.